welcome to For the Record. On this program, we talk about issues and the people that affect the events in Sudbury. With me today is our police chief, Peter Lembo. Peter, I know that you date back to the days of Chief McGovern,
Right.
and just before you came, he was a one-man police force.
That's right.
When you joined him, there were how many people on the force?
I believe there were 7 back in 1966. There were 7 men on the police department at that time. The job was a lot different than it is today.
Maybe you can tell us what some of the differences are.
Well, in those days, we used to have to, we had the wagons, station wagons, where we used to have to carry the resuscitators, the stretchers. We used to have to do all the first aid and the accidents, and plus investigate the accidents. There was a lot more work that we had to do in those days than I think that the officers have to do today as far as automobile accidents. We're fortunate we have a good fire department in town that does most of the extractions of people that are trapped in cars. They do most of the first aid today, and the transports they do also.
So in other words, you were your own EMTs.
We were our own EMT in those days, right. You had to carry your own bandages with you and your own first aid equipment, or you'd be in trouble.
So with the growth of the town now, you've seen a change in, maybe the word crime is a little stronger than I want it to be, but you certainly have seen a change in the kinds of things that you have to do as a police officer.
Right. I think that there's more specialization in police work today, more professionalization than there was 25 years ago. I can remember working here for 20 years, and we never had a child abuse case in 20 years. And all of a sudden, last year, we had like 10, 11, 12 reports of child abuse. These are very difficult cases. They're very sensitive cases to handle, and they require a lot of training by my officers. We train our detectives very well through the Middlesex District Attorney's Office, and the Massachusetts Criminal Justice Training Council also has courses to train these officers in child abuse.
What's involved in these courses? Is it a matter of how to deal with the abuser as well as the child being abused? Or?
Not so much the abuser. It's the conducting interview of children, what to look for, what type of evidence is going to be needed in court, interviewing the family, showing them, giving them the referral services to go to. It's quite extensive, and there's more and more, like I said, of child abuse cases. In 20 years, like I said, as I worked here, we just never had any report of any.
Do you think they weren't reported, or you think that there's an increase in the incidence of these things happening?
I think through the media, with all the attention that these type of cases have had through the media, more and more cases are being reported today than used to be. The schools didn't used to report in those days, but the change in the reporting laws of who's to report now, emergency rooms, doctors, they're much more cooperative today than they were 20 years ago. They're much more sensitive to the issue today than they were 20 years ago.
In a sense, the person doing the reporting needed a certain amount of protection too, didn't they?
That's right. A lot of times it was illegal for them or unethical for them to report things, and they didn't report them. They've changed a lot of those laws now and made the reporting much easier.
So you almost have to have some psychology then. Now.
Yeah, you really do. A lot of the cases used to be reported to the social workers or through the Division of Youth Services.
Yes.
And they never reported them to us. So we were always kind of working apart. Now we work in conjunction with each other, and we work as a team investigating these type of cases. Automatically, if a child abuse case comes to our attention, the district attorney sends an assistant district attorney out here. We have usually a woman, if it's a young girl involved, a woman state trooper who's trained in it. Our detectives were trained in it, and we work together on the case from the beginning to the end.
Well, that's encouraging to hear, because it's true. I guess children sometimes are afraid to even say something has happened to them.
That's right.
It's certainly heartening to know that now that our own police officers are being more attuned to the whole thing. But that's only one facet of the things you're doing. You mentioned specialization, so there must be some other things that...
Well, there's a lot of specialization in the department. We're presently computerized. Officer Jeff Gogan of our department is the systems manager for the department. We are presently training nine officers in the department, including some of our dispatchers, in the computer training. And this is 64 hours of training at PAMETS, which is Compudyne Systems, which is our software and hardware distributor in Acton, Mass. So we're trying to get that online now. We've done a lot of our own work in the department. We ran our own wires. We built our own computer room. So we hope about another month or two we should be up to date on that. That'll definitely enhance the department, no question about it.
Now, this ties you in with other police departments, too, so that...
Yeah, we'll tie us in with a lot of police departments. There are about 23 police departments right now in the area that are all in the same system. So what we do is we meet once a month at one of the local residents. Our system manager does, at one of the local residents. And we talk about problems with the computer, with the software, and we try to update it or change things that we don't like in it. So we're continually updating and working with it.
Now, I know one of the areas that worry people in Sudbury are some of the house breaks and burglaries that we've experienced. What's happening on that scene?
Well, we have very few now. We probably only have about 2 house breaks a month at the very most. I think we had a period last year or the year before that we only had 6 in a 6-month period, which was very good. Where years ago, 4 or 5, 6 or 7, within the last 5 or 6 years, we used to have 2 a day.
Is that right? Now,
yeah,
what
for a long period of time.
For the change?
Well, what usually happens is a gang will move in on you from Lowell, Lawrence, Haverhill, or a Marlborough area, and they'll break into houses for quite a period of time. Usually they pick Wayland, Sudbury, Concord, some of the more affluent towns. And once they're caught, usually the domino starts to fall here, the dominoes start to fall, and we are able to clear up most of the house breaks. Then the house breaks will usually will stop for quite a period of time until another gang moves in on us.
Decides that they're going to try their luck as
right. We've had different gangs from as far as Lynn, Haverhill. We even had a gang from New Hampshire that was coming down here every Friday night and breaking into homes.
So they target a particular town.
Target a particular town. We're very fortunate here because we're far enough from 128 and we're far enough from 495 that they usually don't come here. Weston has a terrible problem. Lincoln has a problem.
I see, because they're close to the
They're closer to 128. They get an override, and Wayland gets a little bit of an override of Weston and Lincoln, but they have a much more difficult time with house breaks than we do.
So does our Route 20 give them a problem in not being able to get away as quickly as they might on Route 128 or 117?
Yeah, Route 20 is definitely, I think it definitely keeps our bank holdups down, that's for sure. We've been quite a few years now, 6 or 7 years since we've had a bank holdup. It's pretty hard to escape on Route 20. There isn't too many places that you can move along too quick. So we've been fortunate that way.
I was going to say, if I remember our last bank holdup, wasn't that some young folk who reminded you of the gang who couldn't shoot straight?
Right, 3 of our local residents, right, that decided to hold up a bank, but unfortunately they
pretty much
everything they did was wrong, and they got caught.
What happened to them eventually? Were they was this a probation case, or do you recall?
Yeah, I think the final disposition of the case was they all got 10 years probation, and they had to do some community service, and they got some suspended sentences. We never heard any more from them after that. They were very quiet. I think most of them have moved from town, or the families have moved, or they've moved, or they've grown up.
So one try was enough for...
One try was enough in the bank hold-up business. It wasn't very profitable for them.
Well, among the things that our young people get involved in that I know disturbs neighbors and sometimes happens when, let's say, their parents are away from home, are some of the parties that maybe some of our younger people have. Have we got any means of controlling some of that? Or?
Well, the biggest problem we have is usually around April, May, and June, and then again in September. 99% of these parties that we have problem with are not attended by the parents. The parents may be down the Cape, or they may be on vacation for a week, and they leave their teenagers at home. And, of course, the first thing that teenagers will do when the parents are gone is have all their friends over. They'll usually have a party with 10 or 15 youth there, but what usually happens is everybody in town finds out there's a party at
the word gets
so-and-so.
out.
The word gets out, there's a party at so-and-so's house, and they all come to the house and drive over the neighbors' lawns, knock down mailboxes. They're drinking, and a lot of times they've caused tremendous destruction to the people's houses that the party's been taking place at. I've seen houses in this town demolished, thousands of dollars in property.
In other words, the one holding the party, the young person holding the party does not.
Well, he loses control.
Of
He
what's
loses
going
control.
on.
What he usually does to us, he'll call us about 11 o'clock at night and say, come up here, the party's out of control, or we want to get somebody out of the house. That's where our problem comes in, because we only have 3 officers and a sergeant that are on patrol at night.
Yes.
Now they have to go to these parties with 200 or 300 kids and try to control kids that are drinking. They're throwing beer cans at my officers and swearing at them. And of course, in the interim, we're getting automobile accidents and other calls for police service that we have to break away officers from the scene, so it's a problem. What I've done the last 4 or 5 years to augment the regular patrol is we have what we call party patrols on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night, where we bring in 4 extra men.
Are these auxiliary police?
No, we don't have any auxiliaries or special. These are regular police officers that we bring in to handle strictly the parties. That's how many of the, because we have a lot of problems. The other patrol officers have to, like I say, handle the other calls for police services, burglar alarms, house breaks, larcenies, shoplifting, and just...
Well, what's the parental obligation in the party that's being held in their house? Now, it almost sounds like they don't even know.
I'm sure they don't.
What's going on.
No. Yeah. What we've done, we think proves very successful, is that we bring the parents to court. If there's minors at that party and they've been arrested for intoxication or drunken driving or motor vehicle violations or malicious destruction of property to anybody in the neighborhood, we hold the parents responsible, and we bring them to court for a charge called keeping a noisy and disorderly house. In most cases, the courts have backed us in it. In some cases, they haven't. It depends upon the circumstances of the case. Last year, we brought 3 people to court in town, 3 parents to court. 2 of them were convicted. The other one wasn't convicted for some reason. I don't remember the exact facts of the
I'd be
case.
interested to know the difference in the one that was not convicted versus the one that ones that were convicted.
I don't remember the facts of the case. I think on one particular case, the ones that weren't convicted that we did bring to court was they had good intentions of controlling the party, but it got out of hand.
Meaning that the parents were home at the time?
The parents were home at the time in this particular party, and it got out of hand. They didn't want drinking at the party. They weren't going to tolerate it. But kids, when they get to be juniors and seniors in high school, they're going to drink. And I've seen it for 30 years and when I was in high school, and it hasn't changed one bit in 30 years. You can have all the publicity you want, and you can do everything that you want. It's not going to change. They reach that age of 16, 17, 18 years old, and they start feeling their oats a little bit and their independence. And they want to do these things. If we can just control it, is the best that I can say. If we catch any minors with alcohol in the car, we either arrest them, take them to court, we call their parents. There's a lot of different avenues that we can.
Well, as a corollary to that, I know people who live on dead-end streets that have wooded areas behind them very frequently have trouble with the beer parties during the summertime.
Right.
Is that something else that you get quite a few calls for?
Yeah, usually down around Barton Drive. That we have a lot of problems on Barton Drive, on Lincoln Road up at the hill up here. I think they call that Cow Hill or up at the
Is that
off
near
of Lincoln Road.
Scott there?
Right.
On Wayhill Road?
Yeah, usually if we see a lot of cars, we will tow the cars.
That's a tip-off?
Yeah, it's a tip-off. There's a lot of cars at the end of a road or something. The neighbors see it, and they call us. Hemlock, where the swimming pool is, they'll get down there to have a swim. 15 or 20 cars will get down. Of course, they become very boisterous, and they start raising a little hell down there. And, of course, the neighbors call us, and we get down, and we'll tow their cars. But my officers tell me they're getting a little smarter today. They're hiding their cars.
Yeah.
They're not leaving
I know,
them in
maybe
the
we
open.
shouldn't be telling them.
They're not leaving them out as much. They're hiding their cars today and keeping the parties inside the house much quieter.
Well, it seems to have to get pretty extreme before they do convict them or make them do time. I remember one of our cases where one of our officers literally suffered from a fractured instep from somebody who thought that he could do anything
that
he
particular
pleased.
defendant, he did some time
Yes.
on that. He did his time on weekends every...
Okay, I thought he had literally gone to Billerica.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he went to Billerica. He did some time at Billerica, right.
Okay, I presume you haven't heard from him anymore?
No.
Having learned his lesson.
No, he's grown
also.
up now. Usually if we can get them by 19 or 20, 99% of them fortunately grow up and we don't have any police problems with them anymore.
Well, I can remember in the earlier days when Chief McGovern was able to do a little instant justice. And at that time, it seems to me what he would do is if you were caught speeding, he would lift your license for a week. If you were caught littering, he would put you on the detail and make you clean up the town on weekends. And I guess one of our parents, who in my terminology would be known as a guardhouse lawyer, decided he could not do that, to which the chief said, "You're right, I can't, we'll give your kid a court record instead." And in some ways, I'd almost like to see us be able to go back to where we took care of it locally, but I suppose that sort of thing is gone now in this.
It definitely is. It's much more impersonal today in police work than it used to be. Even though dealing with the juvenile offenders is still... we work with the parents on that if we possibly can.
Yes.
Sometimes there may be 3 or 4 times that an individual is involved in trouble before he's taken to court. Usually that juvenile is the same one that they're having problems with at the school. They're having problems with us, having problems where he's working. It usually follows a certain pattern. The same names that they have at the school are the same names, the names that we see on our police blotter every week. And there's always usually 20 or 25 juveniles in town that we have problems with. As they grow up, somebody jumps in and fills in their space.
Do you find that some parents literally ask you to give them a hand in controlling some of these kids?
Oh,
in
sure.
this kind of situation?
Yeah, they have to get these chins petitions. Billy Carroll has to get somebody that's not responding to the family and is having a lot of problems in the family.
Okay, you'll have to explain a chin.
Chins petition is a child in need of service, or they're brought before the court. It's a waiting out period, like I say, for most children. It's that age, the growing up age is between 14 and like 17 or 18 is a problem.
Is this what used to be known as the wayward child? When a parent
they have a lot of names, but they've
Okay.
found a lot of that unconstitutional now. Wayward children, stubborn children. It's the same laws, but they put a little bit fancy names on the titles rather than call them that, right?
Now, what happens when we have a drunken driving situation? Not necessarily a minor, but I'm sure we also have adults that get involved in that kind of thing, too.
Well, what I started about 5 years ago is videotaping all the drunken drivers. So we have at least 2 officers that work every shift that are able to conduct a videotape. As they come out of the car with their videotaped in the booking area, they also made to walk a line inside the police station. And they're talked to. There's certain verbiage that are used. We see how they respond, and we keep it on videotape, which we find to be it's definitely an asset to us. 'Cause we have very few cases that they fight in court in drunken driving cases. Usually the attorney will come to the station with his client. An assistant DA will be there with my prosecutor. They'll view the videotapes. In most cases, you can pretty well determine whether a person is drunk or not.
Well, I suppose it was true before. By the time you got around to a court case, the person has sobered up.
Well, that's true, too. But
they certainly were not going to show the same way
they weren't certainly going to show the next day in court, but they shows them that night, especially if they're unruly or they're causing a disturbance or falling down or have a slur in their voice. This shows up on videotape. The tape doesn't lie.
So this, again, is something that you have to train your police officers in a specialized way, then?
Yeah, I send Officer Bruce Noer, who's my video and photographer for the police department, to school. He did extensive training at a couple other police departments, and also 3 months of training with the Mass State Police. Worked directly with the Mass State Police for 3 months. I broke him away to learn all these, the modern techniques of what we could use. And he's conduct training seminars within the department and in-service training. So we've done our own training right in the department. And it's worked well.
Have we ever gone to the extreme of the roadblocks on Route 20? I personally have not run into any of them myself. Have we done that at all?
We run about 4 roadblocks a year, and we run a couple of what they call operation stops, where we just stop vehicles to check to see if they're properly insured, properly licensed, and so forth.
And you can do that all right?
Well, we have guidelines that we have to follow. We usually have printed in the Town Crier or the Framingham News when we're going to conduct a roadblock.
Oh, all right. You let them know.
We let you know. Yeah, there's certain guidelines that have been put out by the Supreme Court that we have to do. We don't tell the people where we're going to be.
All right.
We tell them that we're going to be there.
Okay.
So they know if it's a Friday or Saturday night, we give them advance warning that we're going to be out there. In fact, we will be conducting between now and the end of the year about 3 or 4 more roadblocks. We usually work in conjunction with the Registry of Motor Vehicles and the sometimes the State Police, but mostly the Registry of Motor Vehicles assist us in it.
Now, are you apt to pick a holiday time? New Year's Eve being one of the most obvious ones that comes to mind?
We just
take a random
dates, right? Because we have to work. We need some registry officers there. We need proper lighting there. We have to do it at when they have available personnel to assist us in it. So sometimes we may call for New Year's Eve and say, not this year, but we can give you January 13th or something, and we'll run it on that weekend.
Okay. Now, can this be done at any time of the day or night?
No, there are certain guidelines on times. You have to put out signs, to have proper lighting. There's a whole list. There's about 4 pages of guidelines that we have to follow before we start this.
Now, I may be jumping a little bit, but isn't it now also okay for you to conduct a search of a car when you have a roadblock stop without necessarily having a search warrant for that car?
No.
You don't?
No.
Okay. Now, what am I confusing that with?
Well, you're confusing it with we have a policy in our department on inventory searches, where if a person is arrested, we take them into custody. We also take their car into custody. Then we conduct an inventory search of their automobile. And if we find it, we're liable to do that. Of course, with an automobile, it's much easier for us than an automobile because you can see everything. And if you can view with what you can see with your eyes, you can seize. You don't need a search warrant.
Okay, so if something is sitting on the seat beside me,
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
Let's say you stop me for speeding,
right,
and something is obviously on the seat beside me, then it's okay to have.
Well, if it's a gun and you're not licensed to carry a firearm, I can certainly seize that gun without a search warrant, make an arrest, search incidental to that arrest, and seize the weapon. Alcohol is a big thing. You stop a car and you don't see any beer cans, but the driver is undoubtedly intoxicated. When you have them come out of the car, if you can smell alcohol in that car, you can search on probable cause, what they call, with your senses. You can search underneath the seat, and you can look around for it.
The idea being that the fact that you were able to smell the alcohol gives you the probable
cause to search, right.
Because one of the things I can remember one of your men doing a long time ago was giving me one of the Miranda warnings, and somebody had seen me carry it around and wondered what I was doing carrying it around, and of course I suppose I could have made a good story out of it, but I didn't. But you might want to mention what the Miranda warning really is and how the police feel about it.
Well, the Miranda warnings, it's a case that came down quite a few years ago. It was advising people who are arrested or people that are suspected in a criminal case or are in a custodial position, taken to the police station and held there against their will. That's a custodial position that they're in. They're advised that they can have an attorney present. Anything they say can be used against them in a court of law. If they wish to stop talking at any time with you, they may. If they can't afford an attorney will be provided for them. This is basically what the rights are.
Okay, and I can remember when it first came out, people giving some kinds of complaints about it, but to me it just seems a normal thing to do, because people who habitually broke the law knew all of these, and somebody coming in for the first time would probably be unaware of it. So I would imagine the police have no.
Well, there's been a lot of cases on it since the inception of it, and I don't think it really makes too much difference now, anyhow.
Do you think most people are pretty well aware of all of these things?
People are pretty much aware. It's when they start to get into when they start breaking it apart and finding different segments. Did you say this? Did you do that? That's where the problem. And usually that's what the attorneys will do on motions to suppress the evidence or something, trying to say you didn't advise them of their rights. They didn't understand their rights. They didn't give you a valid waiver of their rights. I've seen very few cases that we've ever lost because of the Miranda decision. In fact, I've even never heard of. Most of your cases today, your big cases are drug cases. 90% of your cases in the court today are drug cases, and those are usually attacked on search and seizure rather than Miranda warnings. They're attacked on the probable cause on search and seizures, getting search warrants.
How is Sudbury shaping up as far as drug cases are concerned?
We have very few drug cases, even though we do know who a lot of the pushers are. We even know where a lot of the drugs are coming from. We know who the users are. And we have, with the guidelines that are set down to us through the courts, we have problems getting search warrants. We have a lot of information from juveniles in town that so-and-so, the parents may say, so-and-so is selling drugs down on Route 20. He sold a bag of marijuana to my boy. They give us the name, but we don't want to be involved.
Okay, now you'll have to explain that one.
Well, if they can give us all the information they want, but if they don't want to be involved.
Oh, I see. You're saying that's the person reporting it.
The person
we don't want to be
reporting it.
involved.
We get a tremendous amount of information, but that's where people want to stop, right there.
Okay, I'm sorry. As I was listening to you, I thought you were telling me the police didn't want to get involved.
Oh, no.
It wasn't making a bit of sense.
We'd like to
me.
get involved.
Of course. All right, so what you're saying is in order for this to stick, of course, they've got to go all the way with you.
They've got to go all the way. When you start from the beginning, from the information, you have to follow it all the way through the end.
Sure, of course.
What usually happens is if you have a young boy, 16 or 17, and he turns in somebody who's supplying him drugs, you have to remember the next day he has to come back to school here.
Yes.
And he has to live with his peers, so that's a big problem. And most of the people that are experimenting with drugs, usually are on the high school, college level.
So this is what's protecting the drug pusher.
Yeah, in this particular area, it really is. As far as stakeouts, drugs being sold on corners, we don't have that much of it here.
Well, I appreciate the problems that you run into. I hope that people listening to you have learned a little bit about what they might be able to do to help our police officers, and hope that they also know what they can do to prevent having problems at home. Everything that you've heard here today has been for the record